Today is our first episode for our group advocacy podcast project. My name is Herne Voet. I'm the first discussion facilitator today, and we're talking about matters that are relevant to graduate students going through a marriage and family therapist or LPCC program. And we're going to be talking about working conditions in these programs to start this series of conversations.
Oh, that sounds
I
good.
have my co-host. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I am Shravani. I'm also currently a practicum student studying to be an LMFT, and excited to kind of get into these conversations and see how we can impact and how we can better working conditions for all of us students and all of us mental health practitioners who are entering the field.
Yes, so starting off, just got some background information that I was doing some research on. And so a little bit of information. See, 42% of working adults report experiencing burnout, and burnout is a emotional state of mental and other physical exhaustions that are brought on by prolonged and or repeated stress. This comes from psychology.org. The article is new polling data shows most employees offer some form of mental health benefit, but burnout impacts over 40% of employees. And also, two in five employed adults worry about retaliation or being fired if they take time off of work for their mental health or seek mental health care. The 2024 NAMI Workplace Mental Health Poll, 31% of employees state that they're very satisfied with work culture in the workplace. 45 staying somewhat satisfied, which means it's about 24% that are not satisfied, just some extrapolation of data. 50% of employees in the ages of 18 to 29, so the Gen Z to geriatric Gen Z, early Gen Z, rate mental health as somewhat poor, and entry-level employees are less likely to say their mental health is very good compared to executive level employees, with 35% of entry level have very good mental health, and executives note 48% respectively.
Nice. Yeah, those are some really interesting stats. It's really crazy to see how much burnout really affects so many practitioners and especially students or especially kind of entering the field and seeing how those numbers are really high. And even despite getting or maybe having some kind of mental health program offered, it's not helping and it's not showing in the statistics that those numbers are decreasing and that employees are getting the mental health support that they seek.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a huge issue, and this is general population and it's averages. So different industries will have different field specific rates. And I'd imagine
Mhm.
working in mental health ours are higher because we are directly dealing with these things. So going into this topic specifically for marriage and family therapists or or PCC trainees, the very little information actually comes up. So I did a Google Scholar inquiry, burnout among MFT trainees. I found one article. It's the Lal A and Glebova T, and their findings that talk about how personal values and characteristics, either high or low beneficial traits, impact burnout among trainee experiences. There's also Leslie T. They did a quantitative analysis on burnout from the Chicago School of Professionals, and they talk about how supervision is an important part in managing burnout. And they do a bit of a call to action for more support in researching this topic. However, this is student research, so it is unpublished and it's not peer reviewed.
Yeah, it definitely seems like we're lacking on a lot of information, a lot of kind of detailed ways and actionable points in which mental health practitioners can be supported and really understood throughout this process.
Mhm. Yeah, there is a very big gap in these things, and they all focus around personal values, personal characteristics, on how to prevent these things rather than addressing systems. And that comes up with Karris MG, and they know like imposter syndrome is a big part of increased burnout or higher negative traits. But here's where it gets interesting. When to Google Scholar, I looked up toxic culture in marriage and family therapist traineeship. No relevant results. Exploitation in marriage and family therapy traineeships. No relevant results. There is not structural support to look into how harmful the culture is to prevent burnout. So I went into a standard Google search, and it's the same thing, exploitation in marriage and family traineeships. I found Reddit threads, LinkedIn posts, TikTok videos, YouTube videos. Like in the common discourse, this is a known issue and it's talked about, but it is not fundable institutionally.
Yeah, that definitely shows kind of where the priorities are in terms of funding, where the priorities are in terms of really providing real support to this. I think you mentioned it with that toxic culture, but there is so much of this, kind of commonality where it's like you're meant to suffer in this early period of your career, and you're meant to go through things, and that's what's gonna shape you to be a better clinician versus
Mhm,
and that's something that's obviously impacting so many people where you can see that people are willing to discuss these things. They're wanting to, connect with each other on it and help to support each other. But then there's no, again, real of those actionable ways that companies can really support, that programs can actually support the mental health needs of their practitioners and create this entry into the field that will welcome more people and that will want people to be in the service type of industry or that healthcare
mhm.
service industry, and instead creating just such a barrier and such and really creating harm for so many early mental health practitioners with this.
Oh, the culture how it is very harmful to people getting into the industry because like, us students will come into the profession burned out from a year being taken advantage of. And it's not that there isn't an awareness about how compensation plays a role in burnout, because I also looked into camps, like California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, like their official stance on paying people during practicum is purely optional. As well, it's supposed to count towards your hours. You're getting paid in exposure, if you will. But as soon as you're an associate, that's when they start caring about your economic well-being. The the quotes, the current employment model for associate marriage and family therapists makes it difficult for them to support themselves financially during the time period when they are accruing required supervised experience. The lack of pay can also create barriers to entry into the workforce based on socioeconomic status, decreasing potential diversity in our profession. There is awareness that we need to be paid while learning to do the job. It is just that this is a choice they're making to not require students.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that so much of it is hidden behind, reduction in hours. Maybe the practicum won't be a completely full-time thing. So then it's not the same workload and it doesn't deserve the same type of compensation for that. However, it ends up being that the workload also increases so exponentially for students, and for these early career practitioners who are in it because of this mentality that they need to just do it for the hours that they're allowed to be used for free labor, and of course companies are going to take advantage of that. We have a student here who can handle maybe an in or who with their hours can handle an increased caseload. However, it doesn't take into account all of the other stressors that come with that. And, they kind of just keep piling that work onto people who don't get paid.
Hmm.
And really like there's just no support for that. And it's very much like oh, you should be grateful for this experience. You should be grateful for the fact that you have a chance at more hours. But it's like I'm doing the job of a full-time worker and I have that full-time caseload. And then I have half of the amount of time to do it, and I have no compensation for it or no rewards for it.
Oh, absolutely. And like being us and kind of going off, which like when we are students, that's the least time we have available. And I don't know if my own personal experience, like I work full time, I do school full time, and I have to do practicum, and I have my own personal life matters I need to take care of. And like by the end of the day, it's like on a busy day, I'm working 14 hours a day.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm only getting paid for 8 of those hours. Everything else is I'm paying to be a part of.
Mhm.
And like there's just so much like it's pressure, it's stress, and let's go back to the well, we all went through it, so just grit your teeth. It's giving very much I was beat as a kid and
Mhm.
I turned out okay. So take your lumps. You'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we had kind of talked, in relation to this toxic culture, but that's kind of like hazing, where it's like, oh, it's okay
Hmm.
to treat this next batch of people that are coming in horribly because they have to know, we have to put them through the worst so that they can deserve the best parts of this career. And the
Hmm.
problem is, like you mentioned, you work full time, you're doing school full time, and practicum takes up a huge portion of that week also. Most of the time it is part time to more than that hours every single week in order to get the appropriate amount of direct client hours that we need to graduate or to get on to that next step. And then the problem is, that's not just a one-time story or not, that's just not the rare case. That is the overwhelming majority of what people have to do at this stage of being a master's student. We're well into, adulthood at this point. Most of, really the youngest students are kind of in that early 20s range, and then it only goes up from there. All of their life
Hmm.
responsibilities are only increased. There are so many people with families in our programs, like you said, like families, full-time jobs, practicum sites, full-time school. And that's the reality that a majority of people are working under. And
Hmm.
the fact that still systematically there's not a push to make things more accessible, and kind of reduce those barriers, but instead we're just going to keep them in place because of this just toxic hazing culture, basically, or people feeling the need to almost pass down this level of struggle and suffering through the field is just not setting people up for a good foundation in their practice either. It's beating people's spirits down so early on within the therapeutic phase, and then it really can take away so much meaning from the work. Because while you're trying to find purpose and trying to establish your purpose and your work in those early stages, your spirit is basically being brought down because people aren't willing to compensate you for your time, for your energy, and they only expect more from it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very corporatized
Hmm.
with how the whole system is ran. The system wants to attract, bring in passionate, driven, empathetic people, and then it just puts them, as you're saying, like this hazy. It's just break the person down, then we wonder, why is burnout so high? Why is turnover so high in organizations? Why do we only attract a specific population of people to these programs? Because it's all pay to play. Like,
Absolutely.
like private schools are $200,000. The That is like new house money in most of the United States, not in California, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
And it's well then, like, oh, why is diversity in the population so low? It's because people can't afford to work for free.
Hmm.
Like, it cost me gasoline to get there. It's costing me time that I could spend working for free.
Hmm.
And that's well, why is the population always some kind of white middle class person who is statistically more likely to be disconnected from the problems of people they're helping?
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah. It's really honestly so heartbreaking to see that, even coming from personal experience, being in this field was something that I had dreamed of for so long. And for so long, it was something that I was like, wow, I see such real purpose in this. And then just within the first few months of the practicum experience and just being so, exhausted and feeling so overworked, feeling so in some ways for sure taken advantage of, because at
Hmm.
the same time while yes, you have to gain your hours and, people on one hand, you're just not being compensated for the work. On the other hand, I feel like there's so much that early practitioners don't know about what boundaries need to be set in the first place. We're just trying to learn that process. And then unfortunately, you realize that there's a lot of people who are trying to take advantage of the fact that you don't have your boundaries set. They're
Hmm.
trying to take advantage of the fact that you don't know when too much work is too much. They're just trying to add more things and being like, oh, you'll learn how to do it, or it's just hard because you're doing it for the first time instead of I feel like genuinely thinking about the person, genuinely thinking about the task, like really having programs set up if there are students or trainees at your site to have a structured thing to go through and where they feel supported and heard and not just in a one-dimensional supervision way, but
Hmm.
and on multiple facets, encouraging the communication between them and other students and other trainees at your site and giving them insight into more personal experiences and those things that will help in order to set boundaries and for students to understand like what it is that they do and don't feel comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, it's really hard to set those
Mhm.
boundaries because it's like oh well, you just gotta get through it. You just gotta push on through. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's yeah, well, Dr. Professor, that light at the end of the tunnel, you forgot to mention it's a train.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I also find
And it's like,
something to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
and it's like, going to saying like with the boundaries, like, and we're not being taught how to set these things. And yet, just the other day, I was talking with a client, and it's like, we like part of our work is we need to set boundaries with people so we're not being taken advantage of. Meanwhile, I'm in my my ninth, 10th hour of work
Mhm.
with no boundaries in place because I'm just trying to finish things out.
Absolutely. And I feel like also being in the mental health space, there's obviously such a emphasis for self-care and for really making sure that, we're always kind of checking in with ourselves and taking care of ourselves, which absolutely is such a huge part of what we do. But I feel like it can also be used as a way to dismiss our concerns sometimes or
Hmm.
kind of push this form of um like toxic positivity where like, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling so stressed. It really just must be because we're doing this thing for the first time, or you're learning for the first time, and just kind of increase your self-care, and then it'll be okay, and then it'll go away. And it's like, okay, yes, I understand those skills of self-care, and I'm trying my best to do them, but at the same time, how am I supposed to prioritize my self-care when I am in conditions where no one else does either? Like
hmm
I'm the only one who's looking out for myself, and every time that I'm trying to seek help, or I'm trying to seek consult or guidance or something to help me, be able to feel like I'm managing those things better, it's more handled with the sense of like, oh, well, you should be taking care of yourself with self-care instead
hmm
of, we should really take a look on, what we can do either as supervisors, as trainers, as practicum sites. What can we do to make sure that this person can continue to provide their services?
Yeah, and going off of that, like with taking care of ourselves and that the self-care, like so much gets kind of like as you're saying, like so much gets pushed back onto us. The thought that comes up for me is victim blaming. It's you should have known when you applied for this program or you're getting into. It's the no, this is a graduate program. People are really like cagey or like keep information close to the chest on what a program is like when you're trying to learn about the institution, how the program works from the place that you're
Mhm.
applying to. It's like oh, it'll be okay. Just sign on the dotted line. You'll
Mhm.
figure it out as you go. And anytime I've approached like a professor during practicum, like, hey, I'm concerned about these things. I feel stressed about these things. And just say, you'll be fine. We'll get through it.
Mhm.
And it's the like, I know you're a licensed professional, dear professor. You said so day one. Is this what you say to your clients when it's like,
Mhm.
I need some empathy? It's like, oh, it's temporary. You'll get through it. It's like, okay.
Mhm.
It's like the student identifier almost removes some of our humanity
Yeah.
and some of like our due consideration and care.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like, as mental health practitioners, we're so expected to kind of provide that empathy for our clients and for, kind of those people that we're serving, that outside of the therapeutic room and, with coworkers, with, executives and stuff, just within your working unit, it feels like that same level of empathy is really hard to come by. It's like I can talk about things in the client room, or with clients, I can offer so much empathy. I know that my coworkers are offering them so much empathy as well. But then, when I feel like I'm really consulting for those, or asking for advice, or asking for just even just to connect with what other people's experiences were like, and just kind of maybe what they did to be resilient through the process. I feel like it feels very like all of those conversations feel very surface level, and it feels like
hmm
no one is willing to really sit down and just have those conversations, even if it is just to be like, okay, you know what, like how are you feeling? Like, let's genuinely check in on your mental state, or how comfortable you're feeling with these things, or let's check in with your boundaries. And I've also found it interesting because just through the program, and especially practicum class and stuff, we read books that are supposed to outline what that practicum experience might be like, and the kind of step by step of all of these emotions that you might go through over the course, and how you might kind of transition and grow as a clinician. And all of these things are mentioned, but I feel like
hmm
it's always mentioned in the way that it's like, and then if this presents itself in your life, ask your supervisor or, turn to someone else for help. And then, we turn to those other people and they're like, well, do your self-care. Bye. Or, just stay positive and you'll get through it. And, I
Hmm.
get it. And I get that positivity and everything is necessary and in some cases reassuring. We need level of reassurance, but at the same time, it's not helpful to just say that everything will be okay and feel like you're not and just brush off taking the actual time and energy and effort to figure out like, okay, no, what is not working about what's going on here? And then, at the very least, if we can't completely solve the issue for it, how do we make you feel heard?
Yeah, and I completely agree. I had that same experience. Like it is the most well-known secret in the industry that being a trainee is a miserable experience.
Mhm,
And no one does anything about it.
mhm,
Like, it's like, oh, if you want to change it, get involved, be part of camp. I am part of camp. It's never on the agenda. So, well, put on the agenda. See, no one really cares
mhm,
what the students think. As it, as it comes down to it, it's like actually doing something about this to meaningfully improve working conditions in traineeship I need to go become part of camp, become a notable member inside of it, get onto the board, and then champion what almost seems like career-ending policy reform.
mhm.
Like, if you can't get people behind you, this will end your career.
Absolutely. And, as we were talking about before, most students don't have the time for that because they're in a position of their life where they are they have to work, they have to do to school, they have to do their practicum, they have their
Hmm.
responsibilities. I mean, like I have to call my phone provider and then I've been having a difficult time getting a hold of them because of the amount of hours that I have to put into practicum and how often I'm just not at home or don't have time to just conduct those little things. So I'm like, I
Hmm.
barely have time to call my phone provider. How do you expect me to have enough time to go rally in Sacramento for these student issues that no one else seems to care about, or no one else is even making those mentions to get more attention for? So it's definitely frustrating because it really the only people who are advocating for students are students. No one else seems to want to even revisit that era of, when they were practicing. No one wants to kind of touch it. No one wants to really like look that process in the face and say, what can we do here?
Yeah, if it does feel like culturally every person past like associate and up, there's a collective locked in the denial phase of grief.
Hmm.
And it's just denying how bad it was after a certain point.
Hmm.
And it's the shared collective. I don't want to say trauma, because I think that gets thrown around too much.
Hmm.
It's just like a collective negative experience that I think locks a lot of
Yeah.
people out of actually coming in and doing work in this field, especially if you don't have like the as close to near like neurotypicalness to balance out the timing, to have a good sense of everything, as well as being physically, mentally healthy and able-bodied to do this
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't imagine doing this work if I had any kind of severe disability that limited my capacity to do this.
No, absolutely. And I'm just gonna say as someone who kind of struggles with my own mental health and my own things and is not necessarily neurotypical on that end, it definitely is a struggle. And this process is definitely, bringing up a lot of those symptoms. There's a lot of, uh, of those somatic and those physical, those mental things that really come and so severely impact you. And then this is the time when we're supposed to really be doing, this is our first time to be doing that work with clients, and then we're in the room and we can't even, provide those things for ourselves as much.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it definitely feels like, the whole process was almost like made to be as difficult as it could be for us. And this is the whole conversation that we had is really just scratching the surface of the implication of what it could be to or what it means to be a therapist with this foundation of so much just turbulence when it comes
Hmm.
to our first year. We're really this is the year that we're supposed to be spending building our competencies and kind of where our career is forming and how we're basing a lot of the theoretical decisions and things that we're making. And then to be in such a negative physical, mental, emotional space and to feel like you're not heard or cared for in really any of the spaces that you're in. Um, it has, so like it has the potential to present problems throughout your career. And, I don't even think we've spent time thinking about that of
Hmm.
what kind of impact on future care or the care that we're providing to clients. And and it sucks that people almost don't care about just the right now of how it's impacting the clinician, but we really like they might care if we start bringing in all of the other potential long-term impacts of these types of things. And like you said, maybe it's not necessarily trauma for everyone, but for some people it definitely could be. And then, what's the impact of that? And so yeah, I feel like there's just so many ways that this presents itself as an issue, and there's so many ways that on an individual level, it feels like no one really cares, and no one really wants to spend that time to sit there and to listen and to, care about the advocacy of it. Um, but hopefully this will, kind of empower people to have those conversations a little bit more often and, and put it out there and know that it's you deserve to be heard in these situations. And, the conditions that we have are not, should not be normalized.
Hmm. Absolutely. Like, while I certainly don't expect our conversation today to reach anyone with any measure of importance to do something about this, for
How fun
anyone
would it
that,
be if they did, though?
right? See, anyone that does come across this and got to this point, I do want to leave you with a little bit of food for thought. See, what would you do to help make meaningful changes that improve working conditions to help encourage and bring in more people into the profession rather than push people out that could have had successful and meaningful careers here?
Oh, man. I personally would love some more structured support and supervision. I feel like, I feel like personally I'm lucky with my supervision situation, but most of what I hear from my peers and things like that, it doesn't seem like there's a great groundwork for supervisors to be able to work off of. And there's not a lot of accountability, I feel like, going on there either in terms of the personal conversations and the personal support that supervisors are offering. So, I would love to see more structural changes in just the way that supervision is handled and
Hmm.
understanding not only like the clinical aspect of supervision and providing help there, but really mandating some form of personal supervision also and caring about those personal factors that are really plaguing so many students and practicum students.
Absolutely.